Donald Trump is going to the pokey, as I predicted. Now, he may be in just for a few hours, but he is scheduled to turn himself in to the Fulton County Sheriff's Office in Atlanta, Georgia. That office is led by none other than elected Sheriff Patrick Labatt, who said clearly roughly 2 weeks ago he will have mugshots ready for us. Well, he has definitely provided the mugshots of everyone else who has surrendered. Bonnie Willis said they will be able to all have a negotiated bond in advance, and that has happened as well. I'm going to get into some detail about this and then give you a highlight of Trump Jr. seeing his privilege collapse at Fox News, of all places. Let's get into it. Former President Donald Trump, well, yeah, expected to surrender. We are officially in the middle of Mugshot Watch 2023. The Fulton County Jail on felony charges will be booked on felony charges in connection with efforts to overturn the 2020 presidential election results in Georgia. DA Fonnie Willis oversaw the sweeping investigation and the racketeering charges. Now, I want to provide some context here that I think is missing in the narrative of back and forth. Much of this is intentional by Trump and his allies. Fonnie Willis did not do the indicting. Two grand juries looked at evidence and decided it was proper to indict Donald Trump. The first grand jury was the special purpose grand jury. They had investigative authority, subpoena power. They reviewed the evidence. Because the special purpose grand jury has so much power to investigate, they are not allowed by Georgia law to do the indicting. They then recommend if someone should receive a true bill or not, an indictment or not. They decided Trump and his allies should be indicted. Typically, that recommendation goes to a grand jury. The grand jury considers it, and the normative grand jury will make a decision. Well, DA Willis, in addition to that, the first grand jury and panel the second grand jury, had them review evidence as well, and the recommendation from the first grand jury. This is called crossing T's, dotting I's. Now, I was critical of the DA in the beginning because I just wanted to see Trump and his allies arrested quickly. Obviously, they broke the law. Well, now you have two citizen-led grand juries that looked at the same evidence and came to the same conclusion. There's more. Let's put them up, the co-defendants, right? You got 18, but these are some of the biggies. Rudy Giuliani turned himself in. He has already surrendered. Bernie Jones was actually next to the man, probably provided a ride for him. They've surrendered in the election interference case. A federal case yesterday denied requests by two of those defendants, Mark Meadows and Jeffrey Clark, to delay their arrest. All of the defendants face a deadline for noon tomorrow to voluntarily surrender. Now, here's the thing, and we'll keep those pictures up. Some of them argued that Fulton County did not have proper jurisdiction, that this should be handled by the federal system. Now, what does that tell you? Number one, they don't understand the law. This is called concurrent jurisdiction. Fulton County has jurisdiction, the state of Georgia has jurisdiction, and the federal government has jurisdiction because interstate travel or interstate application was evident. So everybody has jurisdiction here, including Fulton County. They would like the federal government to prosecute them because they believe the DA in Fulton County would be much harsh. Isn't that interesting? Meanwhile, Don Jr. at one of the biggest clown shows, not including Trump, in the history of our nation. I'm talking about the GOP debate. That clown show was attended by Trump Jr. Trump Jr. tried to gain access to an area that it was off limits to surrogates of the Trump campaign. Well, he had his privilege card, which should have settled everything, especially on Fox News. But here's what happened when he was checked.
Right now, trying to ban people from actually having discourse about politics. How un-American.
Probably shouldn't surprise any of us, but that's what it is. And I've been told by others that I would be able to go in. So they said we were able to go in, then they said they weren't. Now that we're here, and the candidate that
said you can't go in the spin room.
They're telling me right now, Fox won't let me into the spin room.
That's what the American people should know. This is the kind of
they're telling him he works for security here, but they're telling him that I'm not allowed to go in there because the candidates that they've been boosting while simultaneously trying to cut down Trump for the last 2 years didn't perform as they had hoped. So they can't have someone who can maybe be a representative of my father. Just like a few weeks ago when I was canceled after the first indictment, I was scheduled to go on. And about 5 minutes before I'm on, I found out I'm no longer on because apparently I wouldn't be a great surrogate to talk about my father's indictment. Just so we understand what we're dealing with here. So it shouldn't surprise any of us. And it's also why Trump was 100% right to not go to this debate.
Exactly.
It's beneath him, and when you know that you're walking into a setup because of exactly these kinds of circumstances, you understand exactly what's going on in mainstream media, even conservative.
It's very un-American.
I like to knock the one side, but I got to call balls and strikes. This is no different than what we see from the Democrats. It's no different than what we're seeing from the Fulton County DA when they're trying to put a gag order on Donald Trump so he can't defend himself in court proceedings. And more importantly, to function as an intimidation tactic for anyone else who would defend him, where the DA there is then saying, hey, we're going to add you people to the indictment if you take part in this. I don't know, guys, doesn't reek of democracy. All the people that have been screaming that for the last 6 or so years, especially during the Trump presidency, when I believe we had a lot more freedom than we do now, or certainly since this administration's taken over, are strangely quiet. But I guess we shouldn't be surprised.
My sources tell me he's still talking right here, right at this moment, still upset. Sir, you don't have a constitutional right to go to the damn spin room at Fox News. Number two, if you want to talk about freedoms, you, of all people, should understand the difference between freedom and a privilege or a courtesy offered. Because routinely, Fox News would give you the air chair and not anyone else. Fox News would say, hey, Donald Trump Jr., we will let you come on every day of the week if you talk about Donald Trump in exclusion of others. You see, that's a private company. I thought you guys liked private companies having their ability to make decisions about business operations. This is not an attack on democracy because you were disallowed from going into a place that somebody told you could go. Misunderstanding, perhaps. Probably you're just lying like your dad does. But all of a sudden, because one individual, Donald Trump Sr., has been held accountable by multiple jurisdictions in this country, the country must be going to hell. I submit to you, sir, this country was going to hell when it said that it could own a human body, violate a human body, rape a child that happened to be black without criminal penalty. If you don't think that was the start of hell in America, but today is because a white man who deserves prosecution is getting prosecuted, you are part of the problem. All right, Jessica, thoughts here.
It's just shocking that some of the most privileged members of our society are claiming that they're being silenced. Don Jr. had so many mics on him and cameras in that moment. And I assume the social media reach is actually greater than the reach Fox News had that night. So this facade that they're being silenced and all of media is against them is exactly that. It's a facade. It's giving, do you know who my daddy is? Please let me in there. It reeks of entitlement. Just listening to the way he's talking to the people in that moment. And when we think about Donald Trump not being there, the reason being that he says he won't support the ultimate candidate that the party would elect. And also because he's facing charges the next day and probably wants to have a peaceful night at home before he goes and pays his bond and has to have a mugshot taken. It's also shocking to me that he has to get a new attorney now. He's gonna be represented by Stephen Sadow, who represents a lot of high white collar crimes and has been outspoken against RICO charges. So he couldn't find an attorney that really believed in him, wanted to represent him, or believed he was innocent. He had to find an attorney that believed the law that he was being charged with shouldn't exist at all. That's how bad things are for Donald Trump right now.
You make a very good point, and you're right. The attorney that he brought on board is more of a theorist when it comes to the application of law. And he completely disagrees with the constitutionality of the RICO Act, especially in state application. And he's gonna make an argument that the law itself has to be questioned, and possibly he hits a grand slam and gets it to a United States Supreme Court judge at some point. So you're right, it is a strategy that has nothing to do with belief in Donald Trump.